instructional strategies for teaching tiered vocabulary. So essentially, you want to post your lesson goals. You want to have the goals up somewhere visible so that it helps students to know what they're working to achieve. You want there to be some options in assignments. So if you're going to be using formative or summative pieces, maybe have two options. For some students, they might want to use a Flipgrid. Some students may want to use a PowerPoint. Some students might just want to use old pen to paper. Have those options available so that if a student does struggle, you have a couple that are tried, tested, and true, so to speak, so that you have all of your students able to engage with assignment. In a traditional classroom, there might be only one way for a student to complete an assignment. So again, thinking to the handing out a piece of paper with all the questions on it, right, as an example. But offering choice develops student engagement and allows students to show you what they know in a creative and fun way. So you hand out that worksheet in a physical version. So I'm sure you all have a digital version on your Google Classroom now. Maybe instead of just having them put down their thoughts in sentences or a paragraph, maybe they can do a voice to text piece for you, or maybe they can do some type of display, like I'm using Screencastify today. Screencastify is available on the Chrome browser and extensions for every student, everyone that logs in with an ECSD login. A lot of students are very comfortable with, Snapchat, quick videos, things like that. They might be more comfortable sending you a response in a video format, right? So it's just about creating as many avenues of potential engagement or access to as many students as possible. Not every student is going to love every single avenue. Provide flexible workspaces in small group or individually. So, we have a traditional classroom environment, junior high or most secondary classrooms are, we have the old row system, 5 or 6 rows in a class with 5 or 6 deep. So, you have your 25 or 30 desks in your class. Some classrooms have now evolved to have a few tables in their room. Some have pods where their desks are forming in 4 to 6 students. So whatever it is that you can do to augment the physical environment of your room, it changes those receptive pathways for students because they're like, okay, I'm used to seeing the 5 rows. Today, Mr. S has sat down, 5 or 6 of us in a pod. So what is the pod going to do? I'm engaged. I want to know what we're doing. Today I was in pod A, tomorrow I'm in pod B. What do A and B mean? What's the difference, right? So just providing a different visual for students will help re-engage some learners. Some learners might be engaged all the time, but you're going to have those that come in and sit in their desk, wherever it is in your room. Maybe you have a seating plan, maybe not, but just changing the composition of your classroom will engage some students. Providing regular feedback. We need to know what our students both know, obviously from an assessment standpoint, but we also need to know what we may have to review or reteach or provide a different scaffolded presentation on, right? So again, my example from before of globalization. So I touched upon globalization, even though it's one of the first pieces that you teach in Social 10-2 and 10-4, even though it's one of the first terms that you go through and one of the big terms of the entire social unit, I probably touch upon that word in a 5-month semester, I would say upwards of 25 times. I try and present it in as many ways as possible. Obviously, written definitions, examples from real life scenarios, case studies, try and do some graphic organizers. I'll have my presentation that's available to all students on Google Classroom. Definitely a couple of videos, either YouTube or ones I've created myself, right? So by the time the students leave that class, if they haven't gotten a modality of the word globalization in a way that they appreciate, it's incumbent on me as a teacher to think of or request some feedback from my students. Hey, what would you like to see that is going to work for you? Now, I covered a number of different strategies there, and I'm sure one of those would have worked. But again, part of my professional due diligence is to my students should be involved in the journey, right? They should be the primary recipients of the knowledge that they're getting on this journey, because it's them who are getting the teaching. So involve them. Formative feedback is amazing. You can do it in many, many, many different ways. It doesn't have to be, sit down, take a 5-paragraph essay, write it, hand it back to them. You can do that in passing as you do your circling around the class, as you're listening to them talk about what you guys just covered in your lesson. It can be through homework review, whatever it is. Provide them with that feedback so that it helps you understand what they're understanding and what they're getting in, but they can also provide feedback to you. Hey, I was struggling because there was too much talking yesterday. You talked for 35 minutes of my 42-minute class. Can we reduce the amount of talking and increase more hands-on time, right? So those are good things, good feedback from both sides. We want school to be fun, right? Fun is fundamental in the learning experience for students. If we've removed all of the fun, it's going to be difficult to engage students on a daily basis for a long period of time. So what can we do that still allows us to go through a program of studies? What resources can we utilize that make a traditional lesson a little bit more exciting, right? And it doesn't have to be the teacher standing at the front putting on a magic show or anything. It's just even in a basic sense, just changing up the speed of a lesson. So if one day you spoke for 25 minutes and then you had a little bit of process time for some students, keep in mind that as you're going through your lesson, especially for those students that don't have well-versed tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary words, while you're talking, you might be losing some of those learners. While you give them, a small amount of process time, the ones without that vocabulary background are going to feel a little bit lost. Then they take that work home. If they don't have that support structure at home, without the tiered vocabulary foundation, they're going to struggle at home. So they were struggling to keep up with the pace of the lesson. They're struggling with the process time when they're doing whatever their assessment was. They're struggling at home because they don't have that foundational base. They come back to school, they feel like they're behind. So that leads to, potentially behavior issues. That leads to frustration. That leads to students anxiety starts to present itself or manifest itself in ways such as, my stomach hurts. Can I go for a drink? Can I go to the bathroom? Like those frequent breaks, because they're trying to remove themselves from that feeling of anxiety. So as often as possible, can we build up foundational pieces? In this case, we're talking about vocabulary and as part of this reading screener series. So what can we do as teachers? And all of us aren't ELA teachers, so this doesn't just fall on our ELA friends, but we all teach language in our courses. How can we make our language appropriate to our classrooms in whatever area we teach, right? And we can all do it because there's language that's exclusive to every single course subject that if a student doesn't know, they're going to have difficulty with that course content. 7 actions for successful UDL lessons. Get their attention. That's first. So however we do it, changing the seats in our class, having the lights on, having the lights off, starting with a video, something that's going to engage the learners right off the bat. My favorite, and this is going to sound like a very simple strategy, but I would stand at the door of my class, and as students walk by, regardless if they were in my class or not, I would try and engage students really, really quickly. And I mean, you only have 3, 4, 5 minutes between classes, so this isn't a long stretch of time. But just having that personable time where you as a human are dealing with other humans, because that's the business we're in, right? We're in the business of people. How can you engage those people in that quick amount of time? So you have to quickly learn something about every single student that walked by. And does it take time? Absolutely. But it's an investment that I thought was incredibly important in that relationship development piece. So how are we going to get their attention? Make sure they can see it, hear it, and act on it. So with like my globalization example, how can we provide them with multiple modalities to learn whatever content it is you're going to learn? Not everyone learns the same way. So we have to provide as many options or chances to learn as possible. Make it relevant, make it meaningful. Obviously, if it's not meaningful, students aren't going to grasp on and engage in it. Connect it. So again, as many times as you can connect it curricularly or cross-curricularly is going to become important, that it actually stays in their long-term memory. And then let them apply it. Obviously, the traditional way of doing a worksheet is fantastic. That's something that's been done for years and years and years and years. But there's lots and lots and lots of ways, especially with the advent of all these new technologies, that we can allow students to apply it in a way that they like.